Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. I have some exciting guests who are in the studio, and I'm going to be talking with them in just a moment. But, I just wanted to reflect on something for just a moment. It's interesting. So we're coexisting, trying to make sense out of this new reality, this new political reality, or a second version of this new political reality. But it's causing me to have thoughts about my interactions or people's interaction with me. So, for example, I find that people are really interested in my vote or what they perceive my vote to be, but not necessarily with the agendas that I'm concerned about. So it's almost as if people are in this planning meeting or these various planning meetings and they say, hey, black, we got to go black. Hey, I know a guy, I got a guy. Let me go talk to him. And they want to make sure that we have transportation at the church to get people to the polls. Now, so for the other 364 days of the year, Black people get to grocery stores, they get the hair done, they get the nails done, they get to work, they get to the mall, they get to museums, they get to speakeasies, bars, lounges, wherever they want to go. But all of a sudden, people are very interested about the mobility of Black people when they think that the Black vote might help the agenda that they have. So, we're going to get into some more of these current realities when I introduce my guests. But it's like we're invisible for the rest of the year. And then when people think, oh, we think we know how Black people vote, we certainly know how Black people should vote, then everyone's interested in getting either to our congregations or to our forums or to our sororities and fraternities to inform us about the importance of letting our people know they should vote. But then there's never any discussion or rarely any discussion about the synergy of the platforms, if we feel that the candidates are speaking to our issues. So in addition to just navigating the space of this current political reality, it's also interacting with people who just don't get it and who just want to talk to us about our votes and not about the agenda items. And to me, that's almost as maddening as the political realities, because when people tell you who they are and they show you, you believe them. And they just let you know, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to take, this is what we're going to stop. But with others who think I'm woke, I'm dialed in, I want to help you with your agenda because I'm sure they're the same. They want to know all about the logistics of voting, but nothing about the platforms, the needs, and what we need to talk about. So I just wanted to get that out there. That's something that I have to wrestle with because my non-Black friends want to have discussions with me about how jacked up things are. And I want to talk about the past 500 years. They want to talk about the past 50 days. And so we're going to jump right into it. I have some gentlemen in the studio who are not new nor strangers to the whole world of Black Like Me podcast. In fact, they are my producers and my editors. And they're in the studio today just to talk to me about how we're processing, we being Black people and white people, Black people and non-Black people, how we're processing what's currently happening in our political world, in our world, and how our various communities are looking at it. And so I have Eli Steenlage and Jeremy Holiday who are in the studio today. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing all right, Reverend.
Yeah, doing well.
And so, Eli, you feeling okay today?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, you ready for a good, honest talk?
I hope so.
All right. Yeah. Again, these guys are so, they're behind the scenes, but they help me think outside the box about the podcast. They help recommend guests, but they've been with me since the beginning. So together, we've all put up over 200 episodes, and I love that. Eli, you studied at the University of Iowa for your BA in cinema, and you have an MA from DePaul University in Media and Cinema Studies. when I introduce you to people, because you're also the director of communications at Nehemiah, a nonprofit I created about 30 plus years ago. I always introduce you as a former Apple trainer because
That's right.
I'm an Apple geek. So that's he's got a great wife. He's got cute kids, but he works at Apple.
Yeah.
But he's you were an instructor in the International Academy of Design and Technology. You're also a video producer. You got cool hobbies like creative filmmaking and cooking and eating food. But I'm really glad that you're here at the microphone.
That's right.
It's good to have this discussion today. And Mr. Holliday, how are you feeling?
I mean, I'm here, Reverend. I am all right.
You're all right. It's going to be a good day. We're going to make it a good day, right?
It's going to be a good day.
Okay, so now usually you two are on the back end of things making it sound good, but now you're on the front end, so you're going to make it sound good going and coming, aren't you, Jeremy? Jeremy holds BA from Middlebury College in religion, which I knew, an MA from UW-Madison in Languages and Cultures of Asia, with a teaching certification from Upper Valley Education Institute with a focus on middle and high school English. And you're a documentary filmmaker. You've done things like database management, private tutor. You work with students from kindergarten through graduate school. A rugby player for over 20 years. Man, you have 2 children. You and your wife are celebrating your 20th anniversary.
That is correct.
This summer.
Yes, we are.
Oh my goodness, that's really good. And as I look at your hobbies, I'm not surprised by video games and board games. But tell me but I didn't know about leatherworking and retro games. So like when you say retro, do you mean like Operation?
No, so I mean, the world of retro gaming is like primarily like building small computer devices that play like old Atari games or old arcade
really?
games. Yeah, a lot of that stuff is in the semi-public space, so you can get it easily, if not 100% legally.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like I like both the electronics part of it, that's sort of building these things based on some computer parts like a Raspberry Pi or other parts you can buy, but also like curating the experience of putting them in either an enclosure or something you plug into your TV. Because it turns out like my kids actually like a lot of older games. Like there are some classics that have been around since we were kids that people still play, and my kids are like, oh my gosh, you can play that? I'm like, yeah, I played that when I was 8. Like, we can totally play this obscure Atari game. So it's a fun way to connect video games through the ages.
I love it. Man, I love that. And the two of you work together as a team in a number of places, but you own At Woodland Production. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it started out more doing some short films together, some projects, creative, fun stuff. And then we did a little bit of documentary, and then we started a podcast talking about, movies. And now we're moving into soon to launch a new podcast. It's a little different, yeah.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and I think the story is partially that when we got together with a couple other folks, we intended to do a lot, and then we had kids and a lot of other things happened. So we did a lot less than we planned to, which is also one of the things we talk about in our new podcast, which is wrestling with what happens to the dreams you start in your early 20s and then wrestle with when you're surprisingly in middle age.
Oh, so I'm telling you, you guys are industrious, and but I love that you keep finding ways to connect your relationships, and you show up in spaces together, and you do so much to help others find their voices. It's great that you have space for doing that and finding your own. So I'm excited about that. Typically when people listen to the show, they know that there are Black icebreakers, and I don't ask those of typically of my white guests. But I'm going to make an exception today. Okay. So you know the answer, so I'm not going to try to stump you. I just want to ask a couple of questions. Are there things that we've talked about in our Black icebreakers that you've had to verify with your Black friends and associates? Like, do you really use cocoa butter? Like, is that really a thing? Or like, are syllable spankings really a thing? Or is that just like what Alex is saying in the studio? So I'm curious if any of the Black icebreakers that we've shared have caused you to have interesting conversation with people outside the studio.
I mean, I can say, so an interesting story arose from the discussion of like a wash rag.
All
right.
Detail.
And so I went to an all boys high school, so there's a lot of showering together.
Sure.
And it was a very diverse place, people from all over the world, and there were plenty of Black folk there. And I remember something happened that I did not understand at the time. There was like, we were in the shower and a young man friend of mine was like just washing his face with a wash rag.
Right.
And the two black guys in the corner like were they could not stop laughing that he was washing his face with this thing. And I was like, and I never got it until
The black guy's
until the black icebreaker is like, oh, because that doesn't go there,
No,
right?
no, that's right. That's a face rag, but a wash rag
right.
washes.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. But I also have, I have checked around. I've checked with other black folks that I know. Like, is this a real thing? And it's almost always like, well, of course.
Hey, that's how we were raised up. That's how we were trained. I love that. Eli, how about you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, working for your nonprofit Nehemiah, I overhear a lot of conversations from the black staff and stuff. So I think I hear some of that, like you're talking about using cocoa butter and keeping the lotion and things like that for skin, which I'm not as used to. But I think more so I have conversations with like my family and some friends about crossover. Or to kind of say like, here's our sort of culture we grew up with and here's what happens in the black community. And there is crossover,
Yes,
like
there
my
is.
grandparents had, plastic on their sofa too. And some of those same things in food, we talk a lot about like, things that are important in our culture. Like we do pumpkin pie, not, sweet potato pie. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I know. They're both good. They're good.
Yes.
But I think that's kind of fun is just seeing those differences and similarities between the different kind of like cultures just here within the same parts of our country. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know that we have lots of we have robust discussions with our guests around syllable spankings, but we know that white people get spankings too. When you got them, did your parents sort of syncopate the lecture that went along with it? Would you call it syllable spanking, or did they just talk to you like to your back as you stood in the corner during a timeout?
I think it was real quiet when I got spanked.
So they didn't say anything because this was going to hurt you
I just
more?
mostly remember, like it was like real serious and quiet. I would get like a wooden spoon, maybe
I
a
hate
belt
those spoons,
a few
yeah.
times. And then it was more like just kind of saying like solemnly, like, this hurts me more than it hurts you.
But while they're doing it, like would they take deep breaths? Would they be like,
probably, yeah. There was probably some feeling there.
Jeremy, how about you?
I know I have a tendency to spew out a lot more information than necessary, so I'll make this.
Please spew.
Shoot, no, I'm gonna make it short. So, the most memorable story to tell is probably about my grandmother, who is a Sicilian woman, and like had her kitchen was like a kingdom, and when she was cooking, you could not go near it. Right, and the way her house was, there was like an entryway that went into it, and it also went to the living room. So when she was cooking, you had to go around to the other door to get in.
Okay.
And if you didn't, like, she would always listen to music or watch TV, and she'd always be talking often to a friend on the phone at the same time while she was cooking. But it would go silent, and then like a wooden spoon would materialize out of somewhere and just keep hitting you until you drew your body or your hand out of the kitchen space. There was no talking at all. It just meant get out.
Wow.
And so the only time that I was like struck by an elder in discipline was that wooden spoon. And it was more of like a gentle reminder.
Sure,
There's like,
sure.
I'm not going to tell you. You're not supposed to be here.
Right.
So get out. But it was done in silence. I think to
So
emphasize.
there's no Sicilian when she said it was not.
No.
Okay. It
I mean,
wasn't.
other times, but
She
not
let,
during
she
the
let the
spanking.
spoon do the talking.
That's right. Because it was also a reminder that like in that sort of like like Italian culture, like better. Like what are you doing here? Like
Yes.
get out.
Yes. The two of you have been here, and for almost all of the 200 episodes. There may be a few times where one of you couldn't make it, but I would say for like 95% of the time, it's been the three of us sitting here. What are some of the things about the Black experience or Black story that really stands out to you that maybe didn't occur to you when we start working together? When we first met, listeners, these two came with another friend. They wanted to make films, and they wanted to make films about Black people. And I think my question to them, Jeremy, tell them what the question was.
Do you know any Black people?
And your answer was?
No, that's why I'm here.
And listen, I was so touched by the honesty. and the humor of that honesty that I just thought to myself, I don't normally do this. I'm so busy doing stuff, but I need to get to know these guys. Here we are sitting 200 episodes later. We've developed friendships. We talk seriously about issues. And so I want people just to know the background. You certainly do know Black people now, but I'm curious, and I don't mean like one specific incident that someone talked about, but can you just talk to me a little bit about things that you might be more aware of just because you've heard and produced and engineered 200 episodes of Black people talking about life in America? And they didn't know that this question was coming, so I'm totally catching them off guard because I want to see what comes up.
I would say one thing, which kind of relates to maybe what we're going to talk about today, but that surprised me, is the way that both, your guests and Black folks that have been on the show really understand what's sort of happening in our culture and our country, in a very like deep and experienced way. And yet there's this sense that that's not like a thing that's openly in the public, I think, in sort of white spheres. It's sort of like there's like oppressive things against, let's say, Black folks with these systems and stuff. And I think the fact that Black folks don't talk about it so openly, but know all of this is going on behind the scenes and how it's functioning and affecting them, and that white people don't know how those systems are affecting people in that similar way. And then when we learn, we're like, oh, wow. And it's like, I think, unfortunately, I had this sort of ignorant view of like feeling like, oh, Black people should know this too. And then like hearing all this explanation is like, oh, they know. And they've taken it to another level where they have to sort of process that either, with themselves, or like they can't talk about it openly because they'll look angry, or like they're not working with other people, right? Because they're just pointing out all these things. And so I don't know if that's totally making sense the way I'm explaining it, but I think that's been a big thing of like Black folks have moved on to another level of saying like, hey, we know this is going on. We're dealing with it the way that we can so that, like we can handle the pushback when we do, when there is resistance and things like that, because we know how that's going to go too. So I think that deeper level of like, hey, me personally, I'm just figuring out how some of these systems affect things. And some people have known this for quite a while, and they're just living with it. Sure. And we think like, why aren't people doing more? Like, why aren't Black folks standing up for themselves? And they're like, they know how it all works.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we know how long we've been standing and saying these things.
Yep.
Jeremy, how about you? Anything comes to mind?
Well, I mean, the issue is that so many things come to mind, Reverend. But I mean, I guess what I'll say is sort of similar to what Eli said, but it's just a slightly different tack in that the experience that I had, a lot of it was like around the Black Lives Matter protests and around the death of George Floyd. It was like I think legitimately blown away at the ability of many Black leaders to absolutely and accurately predict the future.
Yes.
Because because we've even talked about it here many times. Like you would describe me and I would describe me as like we were about to overcome. Like we're about to walk over the bridge. Like we were about to storm the Bastille.
Kumbaya,
right? We were almost there. And I was like, aren't y'all excited? And you're like,
we'll see.
Well, yeah, we'll see. Right? Which was polite even, because it's like, I mean, oh, sweet Jeremy, it's not going to go that way, and in fact, this may go far worse than you even hope, right? And so that like, it's a totally tangible, it's like a rock of information. It's like a fact. It's like I watched how that happened. I watched how a lot of people from regular Black folk to prominent Black leaders saw something that I clearly saw very differently. And it caused me to sort of just rethink, how I listen to Black people, to be honest.
Sure.
Because I think, going off of what Eli says, but slight to the side of it, is that like, I just have realized in seeing so many people come on your show and talk about problems that they encounter, and sort of like the effort it takes to do that, because it's like they know, many of them, that nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody wants to acknowledge this reality. They're going to step out here and be the ones to say, oh my gosh, maybe we shouldn't treat black people like this. And white people are going to throw up their arms and say, oh my God, I can't believe such a thing was going on for about 12 days. And then they will move on. Mm-hmm. And to participate in that process of saying something, it requires a really strange mix of courage and self-sacrifice. Because it also
exhaustion.
Exhaustion. Because I don't know necessarily what I thought before, but I do notice that one difference between the way white people and black people tend to deal with social issues is like black people seem to have a pretty large view of what's happening and where change can happen when that opportunity arises, and aren't like when black people talk to other black people about stuff that there's no pretension, like in most cases, like it's really straightforward. White people don't generally do that. And particularly, like, I remember, like, in the church growing up, in my church I was growing up, if we would, like, discover some incident of, like, poverty, you know, we'd be like, oh, let's take care of this, and we'd move towards it, and the community would move towards it, and there was just this hyper focus on doing a thing, and then it would just pass away again. And there wasn't, like, the kind of institutional knowledge that's like, there are homeless people out there every day. We need to have plans to deal with that all the time. You know, like, you know, if we're going to provide food to our community, we're going to provide food every day forever because people are going to need it. And that, like, that process of, like, paying attention to something and then collectively ignoring it was, I feel like, part of my, like, my education as like a white person in a white society. And the idea that, like, if we aren't hyper focused on it right now, it kind of doesn't exist. And I just realized, or I mean, what I came to understand is that black people do not have that luxury, because those things that other people aren't paying attention to could make or break their life, could, like, make or break or not, like, their ability to have a job, to be successful, to own a home, to get their kids to school. All those things and all those forces moving things around are these giant glaciers or boulders that they have to navigate, whereas white people just pretend they're not even there.
And I think, I like the way you worded that black people don't have the luxury to pull away from that. And I think not being afforded that luxury, and that's a luxury that we must afford ourselves. I think that's what ties into some of the unnecessary stress and then the degenerative diseases that happen because of that. Like, I was recently with a friend at a coffee shop, and we've been sitting there for an hour, and I had to go to the bathroom. And I did a mobile order. He ordered at the window. And so I went up because I saw that it had a keypad, and I said, can I get the code to the bathroom? And she said, are you a customer of ours? Like, have you purchased something today? Well, I had been sitting in the lobby drinking what I purchased. Again, you can't see the whole lobby. Yeah. But I felt some kind of way. She gave me the code and said, you know, it's a big lobby. I can't see everything. You know, somewhat apologetic. And I didn't even respond. But part of the frustration with me is I don't know that had anything to do with race. It was like 15 people. It wasn't so large. But when we sat down, no one else was sitting there. And I'm like one or two black people that's sitting there. It doesn't, again, let me just clarify. My point here is not the stress of someone acting ignorantly towards me. It's the stress of not knowing. And when I mentioned to my friend, he said, well, you know, they have these keypads. It's a new thing. You can't just come in. And I get that. But I think what I wanted to ask him, but I didn't want to be the guy continually pursuing it. When you ask for the code and you're inside the restaurant, do they ask you, have you purchased something that morning? I get that you need to purchase it. Like, I get the system. I think he was trying to justify the system. But who walks into a Starbucks just to pee? I'm sure people do. But this is not like Manhattan where it's a busy street. Yeah, like this, right. Like you have to park you have to really need to go. So this store has poor parking. So if you go in there and your first question is, you know, can I get to the bathroom? And I don't look disheveled or like I need to go and take a nap. It's just an extra step. You know, I'm at the age now when I need to go, I need to go. So like, just give me the damn code. We can, you know, if I didn't buy something, I'll buy something. But not knowing. And then trying to process it with a friend and not wanting to appear like I'm seeing this everywhere I go. But what I'm really wanting to know is if you just go up for a code, like everyone in here has access to the bathroom, are they all going to be asked, did you purchase something? I think that just, so not having the luxury to step back, always being on when you don't want to be. And then I got frustrated thinking, do I even need to waste time on this? Like, I got the code, I bought something, she wasn't yelling, I didn't have an accident in the lobby. But the fact that I'm still talking about this on my podcast just means not that she was secretly racist, but even when I don't want people to be secretly or blatantly racist, my mind is still filtering things that seem new and unusual through a racial and a racialized lens. Because I know they got to protect the doors, but that's not. So the point is, not being able to know for certain this is not that keeps that door open. So we have to find ways to cope so that those opportunities and those opportunities that have no real closure, other than you're just exaggerating or no, they put those everyone has to use it.
Yeah.
Not being able to close that out, have closure on it, it's just it's tiring. Speaking of tiring, I've been having some interesting conversations, as I said, with my white friends during this second presidency, this present tyranny of stuff that's really going on, and so people are just equally devastated by what's going on, and I'm just wondering if you had one word just to describe how things, what you're feeling right now in light of this, what would that word or phrase be?
Of all the things that are happening now, the thing that strikes me most is like it's unimaginable. Like I did not imagine that, for example, like the president of the United States would order ICE to send someone to an El Salvadorian prison and be ordered by the Supreme Court to send him back, and their response is just to say, "No, we're not." Yeah. Right? Like in the same way that I thought overturning Roe v. Wade was unimaginable, but even that was closer to reality or closer to possible than what's happening now.
Why was that unimagined? Or why was that unimaginable for you?
I mean, the answer that comes to mind is because it's illegal, and because there are enough. I at least thought like many organizations, many groups of people, like ACLU, groups of lawyers, a bar association, that would have prevented something that blatantly illegal from happening.
But so you're surprised that the U.S. government is involved in illegal activity?
No, I'm not. I am surprised that it is this blatant. Like, because I mean, like whether
I would ask my question again. You can see where I'm going. I'll ask my question again. But you are actually surprised by that.
I am, and I also am aware that it's certainly from the time that we come down here and talk to you that it is not as surprising to you. So
it ain't surprising at all.
Yeah. So I also, like, the other word I would say is lost. Yeah. Like, I honestly don't know what to think each morning when I wake up. Like, where am I? And I'm not like, I don't try to feel selfish about that. Like, I bet there's lots of people that have felt that a lot of times, but it's what I personally feel.
No, definitely.
And some of that is also, and I will say this and move on, is like, this is the end of a relationship between me and the Democratic Party. I mean, like, there have been many times in my life when I've been disappointed with things that happen.
The breakup is coming.
Yeah, but this, like, it's
not me, it's you.
Yeah. And there's like, so just watching, like causes that I have marched for, things that I have lobbied for, stuff that I've been involved in, just be like evaporate in a second. I've never seen it happen this much at this scale. And I'm like, whatever plan we were relying on to make political change or social change through this political party, and to have it evaporate with one election, I was like, that can't be the way. Yeah. Like, there's got to be some other way to make lasting positive change in our communities that is not going to be, that can't just evaporate because someone is elected.
Sure. Man, oh man, is it crazy out here. And I don't think it's just me. Look, it's 2025. Trump is back in office, and some days it seems as if the sky is falling. There's so much uncertainty in the world right now, but I love that sitting down right here in front of this mic and letting the hard truths rumble out of my heart and off my chest is as certain as it ever was. Season 11 is gathering steam, and you're in for a real treat. Let me just tell you. When I reflect back on all of the seasons that we dropped here at Black Like Me podcast, each of them has had a special purpose, a one-of-a-kind lineup of guests, and its own unique feel. I also think about the thread that binds them all together. What we do here at Black Like Me is unique. I don't have another space that feels just like this, where I can really speak from my unique perspective. And the guests who have on the show remark that these interviews they do here are unlike any others that they've done in other places. Sure, nobody else does Black Icebreakers, but that's only part of it. We have created a truly unique space here where honest conversations about the thoughts, the ideas, the policies that affect Black people and that Black people care deeply about. And you know what? It isn't easy. And I don't do this all alone. I have an incredible team that has steadily grown over the years, and each person that joins adds another asset to what we can do here. And all of you that support us on Patreon, my people, my people, my people. We simply would not be able to do what we do or get what we have gotten without you. So as we look to even bigger and better things in the coming season, please help support the show right now by clicking the link to Patreon in the show notes and join the community of people supporting this unique and provocative space. In the world that we're living in, where there's so much attack on our perspectives, our history, our bodies, and our lives and contributions, aren't you glad you have a place where you can still hear powerful, exhilarating, intellectual Black thought like you do? I enjoy it. And so if you do too, share the good news, tell friends, click that Patreon link now. Thank you so much for your support of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. Eli, what about you? What word or phrase helps you to describe how you're feeling right now about the world?
I've been thinking exasperated, because I think this is something that, white people have been reacting this way in general, but that, like my wife and I, when things are happening in the news and stuff, and she very quickly in this administration was like, I don't want to hear about it. You don't have to bring it up every time. And so
Yes.
my inclination is to be like, can you believe they are doing this now? And at the same time that I'm sort of like stating this, like Jeremy, maybe that kind of lost feeling, like, how can this happen? Is saying like, I know this was going to come, this is why I didn't vote for this. Because we've already been here once, and I knew it was going to be worse. And so I think it's that feeling of like, I want to be angry about this. I am angry, but like, I know me just saying like, how can this happen isn't helping. And that there has to be more. But I think it's that feeling of isn't there supposed to be some checks and balances on this stuff?
Right.
And that those systems aren't even working, right? There's not this sense of decorum that we would normally at least see to some degree in our government, that people were respecting the way things were normally done at all. And so I think those, without really going into it, I think some of those things are crumbling in our government that we thought would hold up.
Sure.
Like Jeremy said, like, sure, things, we wouldn't agree with what, maybe our rival political views people were doing, politicians in the past, but to say like there's nothing stopping it this time, there's nobody kind of counteracting that, feels sort of out of control and not know what to do with that.
And would it be fair to say, in feeling so out of control, that this feels un-American? Like different from what you thought America's ideals were? I mean, specifically unchecked power.
Yeah, I mean,
from the legislative branch?
this would go
judicial?
deeper. I have have had some doubts about America and capitalism for quite a while, in general. But yes, I think there was this sense from, sort of the people that surround me too, thinking
Sure.
like, well, things are basically going to hold together. But I think in a lot of ways, we could say the sort of American experiment is sort of failing at this point.
Sure.
Like we're getting to a degree where things have developed in our country that we've established, that we've moved our values to those things, like having all these billionaires run our country.
Out in the open.
Out in the yeah, now it's out in the open, and people are voting for it, and we're kind of saying like, I guess this is what you asked for, and so I think in the past we thought something would hold this back,
Right.
and something it's not.
When times are rough like this or crazy like this, that's a strange statement because I don't remember it ever being quite this crazy. But when we find ourselves in this particular place, various groups are probably struggling to understand each other and how do they communicate. As I said in the opening part, people communicate with me by saying, "Do you have a way of getting your parishioners to the poll?" But I wonder if in your circles, your white friends are saying, to really move ahead in this, we can't just ask black people, are they voting? Or can we get them to the polls? By experiencing what we're experiencing as white Americans, is this the time to ask, is this what you've been trying to say? Is this what it's felt like for you and your parents or grandparents? And is there an opportunity for us to connect around that rather than, you want to vote? You want to sign my petition? You got to vote for this Supreme Court justice. Is this an opportunity, and is it a missed opportunity for many in the white community to say, I think I'm starting to get it? Thoughts about that?
I mean, the thing that I can concur with.
Because I'm not having those conversations. My white friends aren't saying that to me.
My point of view. So, you asked me the other day, like, what sort of stirs my creative juices most, and the answer is a crisis.
Right.
I coached sports. Last week there was a kid who got a head injury, had to call the ambulance, and like the minute I recognized it as a crisis, like everything in my body slowed down and smoothed out. I sent people to do things. I took care of stuff. Like it's part of like a lot of my childhood was traumatic, so like I just like that is how
You cope.
I cope, right? And the minute this stuff, like the minute Trump was elected, I mean, honestly, I put my feelings in a little bottle and was like, we're going to be okay, we're going to be okay. And then the inauguration happened and I just fell apart. I was like, we're not going to be okay. But when that election was lost, I just essentially went into crisis mode. And I'm like, okay, so like everything we've done to get here, failure. Like what's next, right? What is the next plan? And for me, there's like a wholesale abandonment in my own heart of like, like a whole corporate culture that like we can take an interest in the environment and turn that into a sustainable company, which then becomes a larger entity, which sort of then influences policy. Like none of those institutions are standing up against any of this stuff.
Right.
Right. So like that money and that energy and that genius that went into like grassroots stuff was carried up to another level and essentially commoditized, turned into marketing slogans and made money for people who don't work. Right. So I immediately am looking for what's next. And for me, I get excited about what AOC and Bernie Sanders are doing, talking about, talking about like a totally new political alliance that is about issues that 60 and 70% of the people in the country can get behind. Because honestly, like I have watched the Democratic Party fight for issues that are like 52 or
Don't worry, I'll edit it out. I'll take care of the editing.
or like 53% of the vote. And then the Republicans always seem to be able to game that 5 or 6%.
Right.
Right. Whether it's Fox News or whatever it happens to be. And like we cannot win a war of attrition on the progressive left. It's not possible. And I think all the times when a far left progressive that would like universal health care and universal housing and a whole bunch of things have compromised my value vote so that we could do more acceptable things, I wonder if that was even a good choice. Because if it was really clear to delineate between what the Democrats were putting forward and what the Republicans were putting forward, we might not be in this situation, right? And so what I think, I also noticed that time, I think, flows more slowly than we think. Like there's a fervor that comes up in the world of social media, but I think the opportunity is there for a whole lot of people to get together, Black people, union people, disaffected white people, to pissed off people that are tired of this nonsense, whether it's nonsense from Washington or nonsense from their own political party or nonsense from the company they buy stuff from or all that stuff. We're sick and tired of having terms and conditions we have to click on that mean we don't have any digital rights. Like we're tired of being seen entirely as like cash cows for companies that we don't have any connection with, right? And I think that unifies lots of people. And I think that the intelligent white people are going to look around and say, well, we may not be having a unique experience here. We may be entering into an experience of this country that lots of other people have had. We can learn from them. We can combine with them. We can ask them to do stuff together while still sort of respecting that they have different interests.
Sure.
But I think that I just remember like, I had a picture on my wall of like Dr. King wearing suspenders when he was doing like poor people's work in the South, and it was like that black leader wearing the outfit of white farmers terrified everyone, because if those two people got together, those two groups got together, there was not anywhere in this country that could have stopped them. That's like 70 or 80% of the population in the South, right?
Right.
I grew up in like my father was a coal miner, my grandfather was a coal miner, the line of coal miners, and and Union Democrats. And there were a lot of those folks who were in the military, and that military setting and union setting and like worker setting, nobody cared much what you looked like or where you came from, because you all worked together, either because you were getting shot at together or because you were working in hot conditions together. It was like I had a more diverse group of people that my father worked with or were in the military with than like in the town that I grew up in, right, which was mostly white. And so what I'll say is I think that there is a huge opportunity to forge a new alliance and a new kind of political perspective at this particular moment. And I see that some people also see it, to see that it is a unique situation, but not everybody. And the two things I'll say are, like, I love what Cory Booker did. Certainly helped with the bringing attention to things in the election here in Wisconsin. But as soon as he got off that floor, I got a text from him. Everybody got texts from him asking for money. And my opinion was like, I'm not giving y'all a red cent more until you show me a plan. Like, what are you doing? There are tens of thousands of Democrats all across this country, tens of thousands of progressive political and community leaders. And just the other night, like Tim Walz was on, and he was talking about Kamala Harris' I Told You So, right? And even he was like, we don't have a plan. And that's the thing. Like, what I think will unify these people all across the country is inspiration. You cannot ask them to step forward to do something, but you can provide a vision for the future that is inspiring.
And I'll add to that. Thank you for sharing that, Jeremy. What I'll push back on is some of the most damaging spaces for Black folks were the unions, and where Black people went and laid their lives on the line and came back with missing limbs and still couldn't buy homes and still walked into a redlining reality. I think we're still using images of here's where we had a common enemy. It was someone overseas, or here's where we all worked together because unions made sure that we could build a strong middle class. And they did. They opened doors for folks. But it's just so interesting that even in those places that are the sort of the la-la lands of America were very detrimental spaces for us. So what I'm just adding to it is that whatever this new movement is, they can't make those same mistakes, because what typically happens when someone has an experience that allows them, who's white, they'll say, now I know what it feels like. People will tell me, I went to Africa once and now I understand racism, rather than having the humility to ask, is reality anything like that? And so I know we got other questions I want to get to. I'm not wanting to get stuck in that, but I just wanted to mention that's those things are helpful and idealistic, but those are still places where Black people were traumatized, utilized, turned into commodities, and it looked like it was an answer. But those things can't be repeated because we got chewed up in those places and spaces. So whatever this new movement is, someone's got to be sure that they're not repeating a Democratic or a Republican agenda where we're still just a commodity and we're not really asked to lead or to shape whatever the reality is, and we're not just called to decorate it by saying, see, even these people who've been traditionally hurt, that's what they're doing too. So, but we need something else. We definitely do. I'm curious. There are these rallies going on all across the country. I'll ask a little bit later if you've participated in any of them. But are you surprised that Black people are not necessarily having the same energy that they're putting into these kinds of rallies that they did, say, for Black Lives Matter? I mean, some of this seems obvious, but I think there's some other reasons there.
I mean, I think some of it is what you were just talking about. I think there's this general feeling like, okay, the white people are mad about what's going on, but like, do they have my back if I show up for that? I think they've felt used too many times, is maybe some of the sentiment of that. And I think the other reality that I've heard talking to some folks is, so far it's been pretty peaceful. There's not been a lot of like police presence. There's not been a lot of pushback against it. So I think kind of the sentiment of, in a little bit different way, we mentioned, Obama's statement about like, if I was doing this stuff as president, one little thing I would have done. And I think that's a similar sentiment right now of, people being deported. And the sort of phrase I was thinking of is that Trump is looking for any excuse for people to push back against him. And he just needs one small excuse to shut things down, right? For pushback, to start violence, start whatever. He just needs one little excuse. So
I'm hearing that in Black barbershop talk too. I'm hearing Black people saying, we got to be careful because he's looking for an excuse to militarize.
Yeah. So I think people are worried if they're going to show up alongside, predominantly white people, not everybody, showing up at these rallies and protests, that what's going to shift that atmosphere, and so that they're not going to be allowed to do that. What's going to be different this time? I don't think it's going to be allowed to be. I think he's trying to shut down everything and push it as far as he can. Right? He's testing everybody to see what we're going to let him do.
Right. I know you mentioned that there's not a strong police presence. I'm curious. Are you too shocked by that there's not a large police presence while this is going on?
Well, I mean, the answer is no, because it's like, I mean, whether or not it's true, like the images and the perception of these rallies is that they're mostly white people.
Right. And
so I'm not surprised that there isn't an equal police presence to like when there were the Black Lives Matter protests. I mean, it is. I honestly don't know what Trump thinks about it or what their strategy is related to these protests. I don't know what they think about a lot of things. So I'm not. It's hard to figure out what that is. But I think honestly that I don't know. I think sometimes the Democrats are a little more worried about these protests because they're often I was going to ask you complaining about what wasn't done. And it's a real shame. I mean, I've heard recently in a number of interviews, like people who are, like Democrats, but kind of center, would cite a couple things. Like they really didn't like how the Democratic Party pretty much lied about like Biden's age or like how he was showing his age. Right. And there was just so much effort put into maintaining his image for the last year of his presidency. And then like to try to convince the world like that this guy can do it for another 4 years when everyone around him knew that it wasn't the case. And it doesn't go against anything that he did too. I think he was a great president. And like, certainly if you look at what happened economically, like what he inherited and what he did, and like, there's a laundry list of things that are just great. Right. Maybe he wasn't great at telling the story of that, but he's one guy, right? The Democratic Party could have done a better job of that as a whole. But I think that like that, like, I just think that when you do that kind of stuff and you give Kamala Harris, who's really exciting, a really short window to win
What,
this
100
really,
days or
yeah,
something?
and you lose, like, then all these other choices that you made to try to maintain order start to look really, really manipulative.
Right.
And I think that I don't know, who I speak for when I say this, but like most of the stuff I see on Blue Sky, I spend a bunch of time on there, sort of a new social media platform. Most of like the liberal-minded folks from here, out in California, 5 folks in South Carolina, in Boston, New York, like they're tired of the BS from everywhere. And like,
I understand.
and like there was and I think that there was a level of trust. And then like I don't know how you say trust and Trump in the same word, because I don't know I don't know how people find security or safety in what he's doing, because it's unimaginable to me.
Right.
But there has been for me, like a generational trust that has been broken with the progressive side, or the Democratic Party in particular, because like we just lost collectively an election to a Nazi, essentially, or someone who is doing really, really terrible things. So it's like
And we told y'all that this is
right,
what was
yeah,
going to happen.
and you couldn't even win that election. Anyway, my point is that like the protests are, for me, because if you look at what people say, like there is certainly protesting this particular oligarchic movement, Trump himself, but also like the way things have been done for decades.
Right.
Like these are people that are hungry for something new, hungry for a world that I think a lot of us were told wasn't possible. Like that, the tech companies are, you can't, there's only Facebook, right? There's never going to be anything better. There's never going to be another choice. You either submit all of your data to Mark Zuckerberg, or you can't participate in the digital world, right? And it's like, and you have to agree to everything these credit card companies want you to do, or you're never going to buy anything again. And I think like there's a collective loss of faith in all of that, and people want something new. And I think that if I'm someone in political office, it should be terrifying, because I think this group of people, if this sentiment grows, they'll come for everybody, and whether it's Republicans or Democrats,
We see it coming.
yeah. And my hope is that this, and I know I get excited about change. I'm always that way, but
Bless your heart.
I get real excited about, maybe in our lifetimes, a third party, or some kind of coalition where my choices aren't middle of the road stuff or totally extreme stuff that I don't like.
So guys, what does the conversation look like so that a bunch of disgruntled white people don't run and create a new party and do the same old shit? Like, how do we make sure that doesn't happen? Because I'm hearing we need new stuff. And again, I don't need a I told you so. Like we're all hurting. We don't need that. But I believe that we need another party. I'm certainly open to that. I'm disappointed with just how things have been going for so long. But I get nervous when I see the intellectual and the political and even the economic power and prowess to create this new party or other options. But they make the same mistakes by not slowing down and just saying, we're now afraid, because we never thought that Trump would break up EPA or attack EPA, but we've been watching him break up black families and brown families forever. And so we're sort of watching this. How do we make sure that, these split screen experiences that we're seeing on Facebook and on the social media, where a white woman is crying and bemoaning the fact that she's lost her federal job because Trump switched his agenda. And then on the other side, you see a black woman either eating popcorn or she's vacuuming and she's watching it. How do we make sure that when this new party moves, that trusted and black folks and friends like myself aren't splitting the screen, eating popcorn like, yeah, look at them going to do this. Like, as we're talking about the need of this, who has a grasp on repeated political and economic mistakes, ignoring what folks have been saying, like, hey, crack didn't just appear in our communities out of thin air, someone was behind that, or the Tulsa riots, hey, buildings were shot from the air, and I don't know very many people that have military-grade airplanes from which they can shoot. That, like, we've been trying to say it, and it's almost like we've been saying the boogeyman's in my closet. And people are like, you're sensitive. You know, America would never do that. So as you're hoping for this new reality, I'll put you on the spot for just a moment, Jeremy. Are you willing, or who's willing, or no, let me back up and ask this. Are you hearing white people say, we need to tag up second base before we run for third? Like, let's not make the mistakes that they've made. Like, who's been saying this? Who gets it? And are we making sure that we don't build a new opportunity, a new faction, a new party, and do the same thing that they've done? Just learn from the canaries in the coal mines and totally ignore the black folks' experience, and then repeat that on us and ask for our votes on that.
Okay. So, Reverend, that's a great question, and I'm going to give you 3 responses.
Okay, come on.
First of which is, I've talked about it here a couple times, but I've been really fascinated with Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, right? Because this was, in its early incarnation, people of color, gay people, and a lot of disaffected folk in Chicago uniting to form a supermajority of folks. And like, you don't often see black leaders and gay leaders together. There have been folks that come up to you and have said, I'm a lesbian or I'm a gay person, so I know what it's like to be black.
Right.
And you're like, wow.
You don't,
right? But that kind of coalition of these groups that are traditionally separate, but put together deliberately because of one leader that understands that, is really exciting. Because like, Chicago is a black city, and Chicago is an educated city, and Chicago is a gay city, and Chicago has a lot of these things. And Jesse Jackson built this. I mean, I just find it, because I never even heard of it before, until, and I was often upset too, because like, this is a really interesting union of a bunch of folks that aren't traditionally in the same political tent. So I get excited about something new in that vein, even a second or third Rainbow Coalition. So number 2, the feeling that I have from most of my most progressive white folks is they are ready and waiting for the opportunity to arise. We go to a couple protests, that's fine.
Right.
But that's not what it's about. We are waiting for whatever this next thing is to start to materialize. And we know a whole lot about what it should not be. But we haven't seen a whole lot about what it should be yet. And I don't know, and the way I think history goes, like, there is going to be a person that is going to be able to step into that space. Because all of our collective wisdom has created this. So we're looking for maybe someone we haven't seen much of, maybe someone that comes from a different perspective, certainly somebody younger. Because my third point is that I have watched the same generation of white men control this country since I was a kid. They just keep getting older. And it should have happened with Kamala Harris, but it didn't. The driving cultural force of this country has got to go to the next generation. And I think that very well could also happen now. Like, the world the way my children see the world is so fundamentally different than the world that I saw as a kid.
Sure.
And there's a whole lot of progressive thought that is so rich in younger people that I think a lot of these traditional problems, are a lot easier the younger that group is. And I don't know what the solution is or who that person is, but I get excited. I mean, in Christian terms, it's like this. It's time. It's anticipation for the Messiah, and it's a lot of expectation, right? Because it's a lot to ask for a Savior to come. But I think that the hesitation that a lot of us progressives had about stuff in the past is gone, because that all the compromises we made got us here, right? So we are ready, and whatever. I think it's going to be a leader of color. And I don't know who that's going to be, but it has got to be someone that on face with their family and life history and the way that they talk, everybody can relate to. And that I saw an exchange the other day about defending transgender issues I think it was in the U.S. Congress. The woman that was defending the position was a black woman, and she was voracious and had that unique tone that is both instructive and condemning. And nobody could stand up to it.
But they will. I love what you're saying, but what happens is they will.
Yeah.
Because we are voracious, we have that tone.
Yeah.
And then what happens is when people in other groups get in position, they forget who got them there. And so part of the reason why the Rainbow Coalition didn't work is because people forget about black people when they get to those places. It sounds ideal. Everybody wants everyone to be, no, they want us to be intersectional. But then why just so many groups climb and then black people are still screwed? Because what we're finding is we vote, we show up, we have that voice, but we run into the same kinds of issues. So my point is, with all of those groups that build up the Rainbow Coalition, there needs to be a family talk. Yeah. Why do black people feel like we're going to forget that they have that intersection? Like, you're black and you're a woman. You're black and a woman and you're gay. Like, you have all these things together. But is someone talking to gay white men saying you're gay and you're a white male? For those who identify that way. So how do you measure, how do you balance that intersection? Because I'm not hearing that conversation. And so when you want to think like a CEO or COO or CAO, folks are able to do it, and there's no pushback. And so in moving ahead, and my black listeners wouldn't respect me if I didn't push in and just say there's a reason why those coalitions don't continue to work, because people like our voice, they like our swag, they like the neck roll, they like all of that stuff. But then we start talking about what we really want, it gets squelched. And so I don't know, maybe we need a black party, but we got to do something so that we're not the token, we are not the target, and we are really respected in that place because of all the various factions. We represent the ones who came here unwittingly, unknowingly, against our own better we didn't want to be here. We were dragged here. And we find that in all those places, people like our swag, but they don't like our voices and our platforms. And whatever this new policy's got to be, that's got to really change, because that is infuriating black people. And I need to just make sure white friends are having those conversations with all of those groups you mentioned, because I don't think people are having those discussions, because I think they're saying, I get it. I've been there. I got an issue with white men as well for so many reasons. We now understand what you've been going through. Show up at the rallies, but we're going to lead, or not being the puppet that's being lifted up so that it's hard to talk about the black agenda by feeling like you got to pull in everybody. Like Obama the crap was scared out of him that he did not want to be perceived as the president for the black people. Trump has no problem being the president for white men. He has no problems whatsoever. And so there's a part of me that just wishes that the Democratic Party would grow a pair and do some of what I don't mean destroying people in their lives, but so Obama, you're not going to talk at all about prison reform. You're not going to talk anything about drug trafficking. You're not going to talk anything about what's happening to black men. You're not going to talk about social welfare reform. And so while you're playing all nice, are you protecting your base and not thinking about black people? And so I need everybody to step up, but particularly for those other disenfranchised groups, y'all got to have a family meeting and say, what have we done to make us, the trusted folks, just as suspicious to black people as the person coming in the window with a mask on, trying to rob them? Someone's got to have that honest conversation, because black people can't, because that's just as hard as talking with the Republican group. And so it's so much. And I like that there's hopefulness, but my hopefulness comes if someone has that honest conversation, because we don't say, disenfranchised people, let's go. Everybody says that to us, and then they screw us. And then just say, we should just be glad to be here. So if you're thinking about how disenfranchised you are from the Democratic Party, imagine black folks. And I don't think the Democratic Party even knows. I don't even think that they get it. Eli, we've been talking a lot. What have we missed that you haven't had the chance to jump in on and weigh in about?
Unfortunately, I'm not as positive on this as Jerry is. I don't hear white people having that conversation. I think
That's
experience
what scares me.
Is that they feel disenfranchised and they identify with that, and they may start to be collective with other disenfranchised people. Latino, Latinx, black people, Asian folks, all of that. But then when it comes down to it, my experience is they're gonna stand up and say, well, we know what to do now, right?
That's my fear.
We're glad you're here, but we will take it because we have experience with the organizing and the...
We'll take it. You take a seat.
And I think because I feel the same way. I got so much mail, so many knocks on the door about our Supreme Court election. And I just listen, I think voting, all that stuff, do all of it. But like, I just feel like white people are throwing all their, everything in that one box to say.
Because they need to win.
Yeah, they need to win. And this was the most money spent on one of these state elections. And I just felt like great. I'm glad it went well for us, but like, that's not where all our hope lies.
Right.
Certainly.
Like I have no idea the impact of that election.
Right.
On the fact that we incarcerate more black men on a per capita basis of any other state in the union. I think I'm glad because people told me I should be glad.
Yeah.
Like I was told, Brad Schimmel, no. Like Alex, like, no, do you understand? No. Like, but is that going to really change any of the other issues that's impacting me? So we can say that we thumbed our nose at Trump and Musk, but did you also just thumb your nose at the black community? Like, are you not talking about those things? Those are things I'm really wanting to know, because if you're thinking that's a huge win, you got a large part of the population that's asking the question.
Yeah. Now,
if we get truly disgruntled black and non-black people together who really understand this has been going on for a while, and I'm not going to say I understand it, but talk to me a little bit more, not only about how you've endured, but keep talking so I understand how I've been so oblivious that I'd even think that this was an issue, because then that will enlighten us. And then let's let that fuel us. But because I think we don't want to have that, I don't think my white friends want to have that conversation enough to lead it and make it happen. I'm afraid of another round of backlash where voting black people just say, I'm not going to even vote. Yeah. I get the fringe people not doing or voting for the other side. Yeah. But when you start pulling back on just voting in general, that just causes a toss up for a lot of people to jump in that space. Eli, have you attended any of the rallies? Like, I know there are these planned rallies, and
I haven't yet. I got invited to go, so I think I may sometime, but I'm not feeling it's going to make a lot of difference for me to do that. I also was talking about what's the plan here, and so there is some good, I guess, in standing up against generally what's going on, but I also want to what are we here for? Who's listening? Who are we trying to speak to about this? Because Trump sure isn't listening. They don't care. If a bunch of people,
he's not on that channel.
Yeah. So why am I doing this? And so I think there's some other avenues to pursue besides that. And I think in some ways for what we were just talking about is the white power is so entrenched. And even me, who I'm not trying to sound all holistic or whatever about we need leaders of other color. But I think I am so tired of the way things are run in general that we do need other representation to step up, because we're living in sort of this lie that white people are the majority in the U.S. and it's just not true, the representation of the way we're going. And I know that's what a lot of people are mad about. But I think that has to come through to the mainstream and be represented. Wherever that's coming from, whether it's black leaders or Latin leaders or whoever, that we need to see some other people stepping up. And I know, identify with what you said about we need people of color at the table, but we also need to rebuild the table, right? The whole table needs to look different. And I think that's some of the sentiment around how Trump got elected, just because people are looking for something different, but being now surprised that it's coming back to bite them.
I would say my big concern is that Trump has a target on him. And people think, well, if we can just oust his people at midterm elections or just make sure we vote against him. Yeah. But when you're a good leader, when you're influencing people, you indoctrinate. You have others that can step up and take the platform. The issue is larger than Trump. Yep. It's a mentality, it's an ideal, it's a philosophy that made room for Trump's puppetry. But I feel that people just have this sense that if we can just backspace on him, to just, sort of delete him, we'll be okay. And the strategy has not been, how did we get here? How many people did we have to piss off? How many people did we step on to get here? And I hope that that's part of the real community or family talk. Because if we make him the target and he's no longer around, but he's got Vance and other people that have espoused those ideas. But when people wanted to squelch the black voice through vote, we saw gerrymandering. Who has the power to decentralize white power? Or the tens of millions of people who voted for Trump and a few million who would take a bullet for him. That's what's got to be dismantled. And if the plan is not looking at that level, if it's just looking at a ballot box, people have forgotten how we've gotten here. These ideals that he has espoused are not new.
Yeah.
And black and brown people have been saying it's still there, it's still there, it's still there, it's still there. So I just think that we have to keep these discussions going. We've got to find ways to work together because I believe that there's power in that. But I also think that there are rules of engagement. And if we bring people together and it's the same old hash, then there's a chance that black people will walk away from that collaborative table for good. Because all we need are new people with new ideas spewing the same kind of old stuff. That's just going to make people separate. And then that just further weakens the base that could take on not only his presidency, but those systems that he's built or that he has been built upon. So there's got to be some deep, deep-seated trust, which I think comes out of honest discussions.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeremy and I have been talking, more personally, dealing with what's happening and, just like where we're at in life and thinking. I mean, what scares me is that's become the American mentality of sort of like, it's all about me, how I can get ahead, and, can I throw other people under the bus when it comes down to it if that's what's needed. And I think it does go back to that sort of community idea of how can we connect in real ways, in small ways, to build those bonds that, is very different than the ideal of what's been sort of like, let's be closed off, let's protect our own, in our household or whatever. And I think coming out of the pandemic, that may have gotten even worse, we were all sort of locked into ourselves and trying to protect it. And we kind of came out and are feeling that way. But some hope is, I think younger generations, even you see it in like, they're like, I'm not willing to take these crappy jobs or like stay in these jobs that are just running me down. Coming out of the pandemic, we had that problem too. Like, everybody was hiring because they needed more people. And they're like, no, I'm not willing to work, slave away and get nothing out of it while other people at the top get richer. I'm tired of that. So I think there is some hope in that general mentality of like, hey, this isn't working and I'm not going to like continue to live that way.
I'm not going to feed that beast.
Yep.
Gentlemen, we might need to have a part 2 of this. This is a lively conversation. Subject matter is so exhausting, but it's necessary because we've got to build the common ground. But I appreciate that there are people who don't look like me who are feeling the tyranny that's on display and the urgency of this moment. It does give me hope that people are thinking about this. And I'm hoping that there's some things that we discussed that might just help fuel your energy or desires about that, like the deeper conversation we need to have. Like, I believe in understanding how we got here, then you can rebuild. My fear is let's just go someplace new so we forget where we've been. But if we can have that meaningful discussion, not for the sake of being stuck, but for the sake of moving ahead, I think it can make a huge difference. But this has been a really meaningful conversation. I will just say, man, I don't want to make people mad if I say this, but I like that President Obama is pushing what, could you imagine? We needed his voice like early on in the 100 days that Kamala had a chance to run and to do this. And to not come out earlier and speak up for her, but to be seen at President Carter's funeral, yucking it up with Trump in the audience, that was disheartening. So like you found common ground to laugh. I'm not saying you diss a sitting president, but like you're on camera like laughing like you're a part of, the varsity club or something, and how silent you were while this woman who reflects a whole lot of Black women that have served and built and all the stuff that Black women have done for women, for families, for the community, for the flag, for the country, for the troops, for faith, all of this, I'm deeply, deeply, deeply hurt over that and very, very discouraged. And so, yeah, we're going to now look in the rearview mirror that has a 2020 vision and say, could you imagine? Yeah, we just sort of needed that could you imagine if you said that 9 months ago? Mm-hmm. So, oh, my goodness. Well, listen, I appreciate you all being here. And I think it's just cool to have people that are absorbing and listening to all the things that we're doing, helping to produce these wonderful episodes, and then to process it with me or to talk about your feelings or your views. I really, really appreciate it. I want to say, just as some of my parting notes, is I want you to just take a moment and check out our public-facing group on Facebook. I say this each week, but I really want you to do it. One, it's important to join with like-minded people. It's important to keep the conversation going, and it's important that you stay sharp and that you really know what's going on. And I don't know that you can get all of that by just listening to me and my guests. Talk to other listeners and have conversations with them like we had today. I think it'll make a difference. I know it'll make a difference. I want to thank my wonderful team that helps the podcast to sound good, makes me look good, and helps us to have these meaningful conversations that I think are stirring and meaningful. So special thanks to Eli Steenlage and Jeremy Holiday, who are my guests, but also will produce and edit this show. I hope they don't make me do that. Don Thornton, who secures our great guest. Ariana Proctor, who curates and moderates our listener space, that space I was talking to you about a little bit ago. And Jackie Hunt, who handles our wonderful podcast merch. And finally, I want to really thank the listeners who support our podcast through Patreon. The Patreon supporters, you are the lifeblood of this. We have a link that is inside the notes. Click it. You can become a part of this team for as little as $2 a month. And you can do much more than that. But take a moment and find out how to do that. If you enjoy this podcast and you find the conversations helpful and it helps you at work or with family or to be more civically minded in your citizenship, then do something about that. Help become a part of that team that supports us. And to all of our listeners, I appreciate you. I want you to post this. I want you to repost this. I want you to send it to folks. I want you to listen to it again, but do something with it because we really want to inspire change. That's what I really want to do. I want to talk about the Black experience, but I want you as Black people to know that your story is being told, but as non-Black people to feel that you can connect with the story, hence the name Black Like Me. I want you to be moved to do something other than just hitting the stop button now, saying, wow, I just committed myself to 60 minutes. I'm woke, I'm enlightened, and I'm ready to be a part of change. Do something with this episode, please, and become a part of the change that we really want and need to see. Thank you all, and for being a wonderful part of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. Have a great day.
Black like me. Black like me.
I want to thank you for taking time to listen to this episode of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. If you like that opening track of our theme song, you can show your appreciation to Corey Saffold, who created that and produced it, and Marcus Fleming, my cousin, who's on vocals. I also want to say that this podcast was started with the generous support of the Human Family Unity Foundation, and so we always want to stop and thank them for that. For the many patrons who support us through our Patreon page, thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't just listen, but you support, you lean in, and you help this podcast to be what it is. And then I need to thank you, the listeners, who make a point of downloading this, listening to it, and sharing it. Without all of you, this podcast would not be what it is and what it's becoming. Thank you so much.